All right, so you ever get sucked into those house hunting shows? You know, the ones where a dream home turns out to be a money pit?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Love those.
Well, this deep dive is kind of like that, but instead of chipped paint, we're dealing with a septic system.
And let me tell you, this isn't your average clogged toilet situation.
Not even close. We're talking New York Supreme Court, allegations of fraud, and a whole lot of money on the line.
Revell v. Guido. This case has it all.
Okay, so let's back up a bit. Our players are Danny Revell, he's the buyer, and on the other side we have Joseph Guido, the seller.
Guido was representing Real Property Solutions, an LLC, and a trust that owned this property.
A trust. That already sounds messy.
Trust can definitely complicate things, but we'll get into that later.
Sounds good. So this property is in Saratoga County, New York. Guido snagged it back in 2002. 9 homes on this property, so not exactly a small-time deal.
Definitely not. And the sheer size of this property is important because a bigger property means bigger consequences when things go wrong with, say, a certain septic system.
Foreshadowing. But yeah, the septic system, that's at the heart of this whole legal battle.
It's not just that the system had problems because, hey, things happen, right? It's about what Guido did or really didn't tell Revell about those problems before the sale went through.
And that's where things get interesting, legally speaking. Because this wasn't a slap on the wrist kind of lawsuit. We're talking a starting judgment of over $353,000 against Guido.
Oh, and it gets even better. That figure, that's just the beginning. By the end of this, that initial judgment practically doubles with interest.
You're kidding. Okay, so we've got a property with a shady past, a seller who might have been playing fast and loose with the truth, and enough money involved to make your head spin. So where do we even start with a story like this?
Well, I think we need to rewind back to 2002 when Guido first buys this property. Because, as they say, to understand the present, you got to dig into the past.
So Guido buys this place, 9 homes, right?
Yeah.
Big investment. But he runs into a bit of a problem.
Understatement of the century. The septic system is toast.
Completely done for.
Oh, yeah. Completely non-functional.
So he calls in an engineer, a guy named Harold Berger, to design a whole new system. Gets it installed in 2003. Problem solved, right?
Well, about that. You remember those 9 homes? That's a whole lot of wastewater, even for a brand new system.
Ah, so trouble in paradise already.
You can say that. First, there are code violations. Then, in 2004, the EPA gets involved. They find diesel fuel in the water supply.
Diesel fuel. Yikes, that's not good.
Nope. And if that wasn't enough, the town of Stillwater and the DEC, they catch wind of partially treated sewage surfacing on the property.
This is turning into a real horror movie, and we're not even at the climax yet.
Oh, we're getting there.
Okay.
So Guido, he gets hit with fines, has to clean up the environmental mess, and calls back Berger, our engineer friend, to design another new septic system.
Another one. They just installed a new one back in 2003.
Right, but this time they try to salvage what they can from the previous system, kind of a Frankenstein septic system.
Interesting. So is that when they discovered the diesel is leaking from the old system?
The source of the diesel fuel was never actually determined by the courts, at least not according to the documents we have. But by December 2004, this new Frankenstein septic system is up and running. But, and this is a big but.
It's not certified.
Exactly. Berger says he can't give final approval until they do some flow measurements, which requires warmer weather, apparently. Those tests never happened. No final certification ever.
Okay, so let me get this straight. We've got a property with a history of septic issues, environmental violations, multiple attempts to fix it, and a system that's never gotten the green light. What could possibly go wrong, right?
Well, this is where Danny Revell, our buyer, enters the picture.
Yeah.
June 2005, just a few months after that uncertified septic system is installed, Guido lists the property for sale, $595,000. And that property information sheet calls that septic system totally new.
Totally new. That's bold.
Bold might be an understatement.
Yeah.
We know it's this patchwork system. And there's no mention of those missing tests, no mention of the lack of certification.
So does Revell know about any of this?
Well, Revell agrees to purchase the property as is for $545,000.
As is? That's a pretty important detail in real estate.
It sure is. As is essentially means the buyer's taking on all the risk. They're buying the property in its current condition, warts and all.
So even if Guido knew about those septic problems, Revell agreed to buy the property with those problems.
Right. And that's where the non-disclosure about the septic system becomes a big deal. But it gets even more interesting. Because you see, the bank required an environmental questionnaire as part of the mortgage process.
And Guido fills it out, obviously.
Yep. And remember those earlier issues. Diesel fuel, the sewage.
Don't tell me.
Guido denies any knowledge of past environmental problems.
Wow. Okay, so we've got a potential, he said, situation brewing here. But something tells me this is just the tip of the legal iceberg. So the deal closes. November 2005. Revell moves in, probably thinking he's landed a great deal.
Oh boy, if he only knew, right.
Right. Fast forward 1 month, just 1 month after moving in. The septic system, that totally new system, it goes haywire.
And not just a little hiccup. We're talking a complete and utter meltdown, the kind that requires a whole lot of digging, a whole lot of money, and a whole lot of frustration.
So not the housewarming gift Revell was hoping for.
Not even close. And remember, he bought the property as is.
Right, right. So even though there's this question about what Guido did and didn't disclose, Revell agreed to take on that risk. So what happens next? Does Revell just accept his fate and start forking over cash for septic repairs?
Well, he could have. But he decides to fight back. Revell files a lawsuit against Guido, alleging fraud. He's claiming that Guido intentionally misrepresented the condition of the septic system just to get the sale done.
That's a bold move. I mean, proving fraud, that's not easy, right?
It's definitely an uphill battle. But Revell's legal team, they build a compelling case. They focus on those discrepancies we talked about, the property information sheet calling the system totally new, and then Guido denying any environmental issues to the bank.
Which seems a little suspicious, given everything we now know about this property.
Exactly. That timeline is pretty damning, too. Guido buys the property. It has a broken septic system. He goes through multiple rounds of repairs, deals with environmental violations, never gets that final certification. Then, bam, just a few months later, he puts it on the market, claiming the system is totally new.
So the jury has to decide if Guido genuinely thought the septic system was good to go or if he was trying to pull a fast one.
You got it. And the jury, they sided with Revell. They found that Guido committed fraud by not being upfront about the septic system's troubled history.
Wow. So what did that cost, Guido?
Initially, the judgment was over $353,000.
That's a hefty price tag for a septic surprise.
Right. But here's where it gets really wild. Because of how interest works on these judgments, that initial amount, it ballooned to almost $600,000 by the time everything was said and done.
Wait, what? How does that even happen?
Interest on a judgment isn't a flat fee. It accrues over time. And in this case, those years it took for the lawsuit to play out, they added up big time.
So even with a clear verdict, this case just kept getting more and more expensive for Guido.
You could say that, but, plot twist, the court actually ended up sending that interest calculation back for further review. They found some discrepancies in how it was calculated.
So even with a seemingly open and shut case of fraud, there's still room for debate and revision years down the line. This Revell v. Guido case, it's a wild ride, full of twists and turns.
Absolutely. And it really highlights the importance of doing your homework, especially with big purchases like real estate. As is doesn't mean you throw caution to the wind. Getting a second opinion, asking tough questions, and knowing when to walk away from a deal, those are all crucial.
It really makes you think. If you were in Revell's shoes, would you have spotted the red flags? And what steps would you take to protect yourself? That's our deep dive into the septic saga of Revell v. Guido. We hope this case has given you some food for thought. Until next time.